I think we have just about everybody. I'm sure we'll have some late minute pop-ins, but I do want to thank everybody for being here this morning. Dr. Brege, your superintendent. And as I look in our virtual room, we have a couple of our board members I see for sure in here. President Mrs. Marcus and Ms. Wells. Thank you so much for being here, as well as cabinet members. I see a lot of staff, and also would like to thank Mr. Bugbee and Ms. Kaber for joining me this morning as we have our town hall this morning. Reopening schools is really a very complicated process, and so we're glad to bring you this information. We are recording this meeting, so if you are uncomfortable with the recording of the meeting, please feel free to turn your camera off. We are doing this so that we could accommodate people that were not able to make this session, that we will post the link right after the meeting so that people can access the information. I realize that there is a lot of information fatigue that's happening. People are at a point where they're so tired of hearing about COVID-19. People are tired, people are stressed, and we absolutely understand that. But as your team of administrators and your Board of Education team, we're working very hard every day with the latest information that we have to best guide us into the safe reopening of our schools. So I think it's important because people are at different places with the information that we take a step back and we look at how did we get to where we are today? Where are we today? And what does the future look like? And so we're going to provide that information to you, and then we will have an opportunity to go into an open session so that we can have some questions and we can conclude the town hall hearing from you and your questions. So if you would please give me a moment, let me share my screen with you. And I'd like to start by just thanking all of you for being here today to listen to the information. Some of this is going to be information that you may already know, and some of this will be new information for you. I want to start with just going back. We know that last spring was a very tumultuous time in our school district. Even just going back almost a year ago today, when cases were starting to increase, that whole second half, that the remainder of our school year was really an unpredictable time, and it was very stressful for everyone. I want to bring us back to where the state of California came forward back to August, where the state came up with a plan it's a blueprint for safer economy, but there's the school version, there's the business version, and then the school version. And when this was presented to us, really right when the school year started, we were told by the state that as school leaders, so myself, other superintendents around the state, that this information is going to be about how we move between reopening and closing. And so based on a metric system that was developed by the state, we were told as school leaders that not only did we have to understand this information and believe in this information, get behind and support this information, but to also share this information with all of our stakeholders, our staff and our parents and community members. And so we did just that. We got behind it. We learned the 4-tiered color-coded system, which we've shared with you in previous videos, board meeting presentations, and through written communication, emails. And so we got behind this information. This was the information that we were told would help us guide the reopening of schools. And so everyone in the state got behind this system. And so this system was based predominantly on 2 metrics. the adjusted case rate, and also the positivity rate from testing. And so what I have here to the left is the system that the state has been using consistently since August about the safe return, safe reopening to schools. And so you can see on the left-hand side, the purple tier is the widespread, red is the substantial. We also had an orange tier and a yellow tier, but those don't seem to matter because we would have already reopened. And I want to just focus on the plan that was presented. And the plan was that once you hit 7 or below for 14 consecutive days in the red tier, you could reopen schools. So it was 14 when you hit 7, and then you stay in red for 14 days, and you can reopen all your schools. And that's the information we shared with everyone publicly. And so it's important that you realize that that is where the starting point was with our state. And so our ongoing conversations with our labor partners was using the state system, using the metrics, because it was a pretty simple philosophy. As conditions in your community improve, that's when you reopen schools. And so what we did was we came up with a visual that reflected the state's metrics. The only difference to this is that a couple of waivers came about as an opportunity for small group cohorts. One of them was in the special education area, and the other was a waiver that, as many of you know, we applied for and received on December 3rd, right at the time where the surges were starting to happen after Thanksgiving, and then another surge after the winter break. So it's important for you to see on this diagram that we incorporated the information about the TK through 2 waiver. So if you think back, again, the original plan was 7 or below for more than 14 days before you can reopen schools. However, the TK2 waiver did change that a bit. And so we worked with our labor partners and we came up with 10 as an adjusted case rate. Now, back when we negotiated this with our labor partners, this was looked at as being extreme because we were in the purple tier, in the widespread, and we were still going to open up our schools. And so when this was negotiated and this was talked about in our MOU, this is when we decided that teachers would feel safe to come back to classrooms and that we could have our TK through 2 start back to school. And so this is important because I want you to look at these 2 metrics that we have here, these 2 charts that I have. So we followed exactly what the state had asked us to do. Of course, we did incorporate then the TK through 2 waiver, and then also the specialized services, the small group cohorts for special education. And then what happened right after we had this negotiated was the surges from Christmas and winter break. And so we reacted to that surge in cases in LA County. Since that time, Governor Newsom's plan came out, and so there's a new framework. And so at this time, we are having to navigate between the state and the county. So without any warning at all, this new plan kind of fell from the sky from the state, and it was called Safer Schools for All. And so the change here was that for the first time, the definition for returning to a safe school changed. Because if you remember, the definition before was in the red tier. This is when the definition was that it's safe to return to school, was when you are in the red tier. So with the new plan, this was a bit startling to school districts because all of a sudden it was bringing back, according to the proposal, TK through 6 if there's an adjusted case rate of less than 25. And so after the shock of that, we as superintendents started to ask and said, okay, we understand that you're starting with our youngest learners. That's always been our philosophy to do that. But can you help us get behind, the definition of returning in a safe environment has now changed. How did you come up with 25? We need to be able to share this now with our community and our staff. Can you share with us any data? Can you share with us any information about why the sudden change to 25? Which, and keep in mind, as shocking as this was to us, it's more than three times, what we had defined as safe before, with 7 or below at 25. So we just asked a lot of questions about how was this created, what reasoning, what data, qualitative, quantitative, we need to be able to share this change of why with our community. And we've yet to hear why the change was made and how the change was made. But again, the definition of returning in a safe environment has now changed. And so we're bringing that to you because the state has an obligation to provide this information. And then the LA County has the opportunity and requirement to either support what the state is saying or become more restrictive. And that's always been the hierarchy. One thing I want to note about this, and I know that that this is the elementary town hall, but I do want to point out that in Governor Newsom's plan, which is TK through 6, in some school districts, 6th grade is still part of the elementary campus, where it is a self-contained classroom. That is not like that in our school district. 6th grade, as you know, is part of our middle school campus. And what hasn't changed is the definition of a cohort. And the definition of a cohort is a stable cohort is 12 students maximum. And that hasn't changed. And so 6th grade at a middle school level, changing classes doesn't fit into the definition of what a stable cohort is. So going forward with Governor Newsom's plan it's a TK through 5 plan and proposal, which is receiving a lot of pushback. Legislature is not supporting the plan for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to go into all the political reasons, but it was a plan that was put forth without a lot of reasoning and data, and there is a lot of pushback throughout the entire state. The state and the county have been silent on middle school, so I'm going to refrain from talking about middle school and high school going forward. But the high school and middle school is just not part of the conversation because they haven't changed the definition of the cohort yet, which is changing classes. We expect for that to happen and will happen soon, we believe. But as of right now, we do not have that information. So we'll focus on the proposal and what's next. So again, I think it's important for people to realize that we are not making local decisions without the guidance of the government hierarchy. And so again, it starts at the state level and they establish these orders, and then all the jurisdictions need to follow suit. And so the hierarchy is that the next in line, so to speak, is the County of Los Angeles, which is our county. And our county has the option of either just relying on what the state says, or they can be more restrictive. As many of you know from the very beginning, that LA County has always been more restrictive than the state. So the state will put out information, and the county has always been more restrictive than what the state is saying. And that's because of the high number of COVID-19 cases in LA County. And so that's always been more restrictive. So we constantly have to navigate between what the state says and what the county says. Just to give you even just one bit further, I didn't put it on here, but past the County of Los Angeles is our city of Beverly Hills. And so just to give you an example, they can also be more restrictive. And just to give you an example is that Beverly Hills was one of the first cities to say, we're going to say all masks are required everywhere in public. County of Los Angeles didn't have that yet. So again, you can always go, as you go down that hierarchy, you can become more restrictive. You can't do less, but you can be more restrictive. And that's important for you to know. So throughout this whole last year, the state puts out information. We meet, we talk about it. We look at how we're going to explain it. We communicate it. We get behind it. And then the County of Los Angeles comes in with their orders, which again have been more restrictive. What's happened, or what hasn't happened, is the update from the County of Los Angeles Department of Public Health. So it's been several weeks since Governor Newsom's plan came out, and it's getting a lot of pushback. But what we've been waiting for is the LA Department of Public Health's order. And so we've always had that. We need that in order to continue our conversations about moving forward. As you can see at the bottom, it's just a snapshot that even as of today, we are still waiting for the update from the LA County Department of Public Health. The last revision was on December 28th. And I want you to keep in mind that these changes to the protocols happen, usually it's once a week, but it's been a long time, as you can see, that we don't have an update from LA County, because LA County can either support what the state of California and Governor Newsom's plan, or again, they can be more restrictive. We are waiting for that information. We have to have that information. So I just want to give you an example of how complicated the information is and how we work so hard at trying to get and articulate and communicate with you accurate information. So when the state came out with their plan, the state had indicated to superintendents in the entire state, they said, if you have a waiver, like a TK through 2 waiver, it's invalid. You need to wait until you are at the adjusted case rate of 25 or less. And so with the new system, they said no more waivers. And so we weren't open anyway. So to us, it didn't make a huge change in what we were communicating, but to many school districts across the state, that created a real problem. And so when we inquired about it, Thursday and Friday is when LA County, even though we don't have an update, this was not an update via an order, it was through meetings with superintendents, that we were told that LA County was going to uphold the waivers, the TK through 2 waivers. And so when superintendent said, well, that's not what the state told us, I just want to give you an example, a real example. I probably shouldn't be sharing my emails with you, but I'm going to be very transparent here. This is an example of an email that came in just this Friday, last Friday, at 5:00 p.m. And as you can see in this information, it acknowledges the fact that the state had told superintendents that the TK through 2 waiver was invalid. LA County does not agree with it. The state says, okay, well, let's take a look at this. And now, as you can see in this particular slide, that the county and the state have decided, okay, since there's a mix up on information here, superintendents have been told something different, we're going to come up with a process now for those of you that have a TK through 2 waiver. And so we will have to participate in this process, and they're figuring out what that is right now, and they're going to let us know. And so I feel compelled to not throw people under the bus, but to be very transparent with you that this is my everyday. This is the kind of information, everything that comes in has to be analyzed and verified and fact checked, because there's so many people at the state level and at the county level that have their hands in this. And so I just wanted to show you this example because as of right now, the TK through 2 waiver is going to go through some sort of process that they haven't told us about yet. And we're waiting to hear that. In full disclosure, as I mentioned earlier with this slide, on the right-hand side, we had discussions with our teachers. Now, again, it's important for you to know that we use the state metrics of what is a safe environment to return. And so this was a big leap for us and our teachers to say, we're going to go to 10 because we define safe as being 7, or the state has. And so this was kind of a big leap forward. And let me share with you that there's always this balance, because we need to make sure that we're absolutely student focused and students are our priority. But we are an organization that is also adult driven on how we operate. And so we have to take into consideration our staff, our teachers, our office managers, and our custodians that are doing the cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing. And so creating that environment for them at the time when this was negotiated was, we were just above 10. It may have been at the 20, but it certainly was before the surge happened with Thanksgiving break and also winter break. So keep that in mind, is when we came up with this with our labor partners. This was a pretty big move from what the state had suggested of what would be safe to return. So we're waiting for the updated information from LA County. We expect it to come any moment. It's something that I stay on top of every day. We were told Friday that we would have that updated information Friday. Again, they're either going to support Governor Newsom's plan, or parts of it, pieces of it, or they're going to be more restrictive. We're waiting for that information. One thing that I know caused a lot of controversy, and I apologize if this was not clarified in a way that made sense to our parents, but I work with an incredible team of administrators, board members, and staff members that we don't sit back and admire the problem. We are a team of finding resolutions, and vaccinations are only one way, but an important way, to help slow the transmission of COVID-19. And while it's just one way, if we as an organization and as a school district can do something so that we can provide vaccinations for our educators and our community, we want to be part of that solution. Because the more we do actively, proactively, the change of the conditions in our community. And that's really the entire philosophy. The faster the conditions improve, the faster we open schools. And so my communication to parents was, and this is, again, I could have clarified more, is that in no way was I prioritizing turning our schools into vaccine centers and preventing the opening of school. The way that we looked at it was that this is an opportunity. Right now, in-person learning is closed. And we have facilities on our campuses where we could potentially have drive-through opportunities for people to get vaccines. The problem, and you've heard this in the news, is that there's a supply problem. And so, we've extended offers. This is approved through the Los Angeles County of Education, Office of Education has approved schools to be a vaccination site, but schools cannot get the supply. And so while we're trying to do what we can to be part of the solution, the issue is it's a supply and demand issue. We're still in 1A. We should be out of 1A as far as a tier, which is providing healthcare workers over the age of 65, and also those that are living in a residential facility, a vaccination. And we're still not there yet. Educators, school staff, they're next. We're in 1B, but that's not happening because of the supply. So if we can be part of that solution, we want to be part of that, but in no way are we putting vaccinations over opening up our school sites. We have a district office. We have a lot of variety of our sites that we can use that will not interfere with in-person learning when it's safe to go back. So I just want to make that clear and understand that people may have thought that this was in some way to prevent schools opening. And I want to apologize if it came off that way. In no way are we trying to get in the way. We want to be good partners. We want to follow the state and county guidelines. So we are continuing. So with this information with the state, and again, we're expecting information to come in from the county anytime now. And once we have that, we're going to continue our conversations with our labor partners who have been amazing, who have stepped up, who continuously meet with us about COVID-19 testing. We're very fortunate that we have a positive relationship and that as information comes in, that we're discussing it. And I'm very proud of that relationship. It's a good one to have. And as information changes, and you can see how complicated this process is, they've been great partners. And we are continuing those conversations even as of this week. So I just want to update you quickly, our tier assessment, again, based on adjusted case rate. If you remember back to the governor's plan, this is if the county is supporting it, that he was looking at having TK through 6, but I'm going to say TK through 5, at being a potential to open if we are at 25 adjusted case rate or less. Right now, we're at 48.2. So that is actually a 27.1 case drop, which is outstanding. As we were at just a week ago at 75.3. So we're hoping that the case rate goes down as quickly as it went up, because it shot up very quickly after the holidays. So we are looking at that information. We're prepared for that information. And any moment now, the new Tuesday update for the tier assessment will be coming in. It's just not out yet. But right now, or this last week, it's been at 48.2. If there's a trend in this data, we're going to see this number go down. And it's exactly what we thought would happen. And we are prepared for this to happen as the case numbers actually go down. So I want to shift to now, that was where we're at, kind of this is where we're going. And I want to just, before I turn this over to Ms. Kaber and Mr. Bugbee, I want to let you know that, there are just people working tirelessly on our return. This is not common in a lot of school districts to have a plan of what it's going to look like when we return. I assure you one thing, even though we're waiting for information from the state, from the county, I can assure you that the social distancing of 6 feet is absolutely going to be with us to at least the end of the year. And with that being said, that provides parameters for us because the definition of a cohort has not changed. It's still 12 students that are in a cohort. And I think that I'm just shocked all the time when people will come back and say, I didn't realize that. I thought when we were going back to school that we were all going back. And this presents a challenge for school districts all across the globe right now, because the social distancing is in place in every school district, which puts new parameters on the schedule. Most school districts in LA County have not gotten this far with an agreement with their labor partners about how this is going to look when we go back. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Kaber and Mr. Bugbee, and they will walk you through our schedule.
All right, Dr. Breggy, thank you so much. I think it's important that everyone sees the background and how we've gotten to where we are and the details that go into it. So thank you for explaining that. Before we even look at the schedule, I just want to send a huge thanks and a shout out to everyone in the community. We are all in this together. This is not something that any of us wants. Dr. Breggy mentioned, we're all exhausted. We're all frustrated. I think everyone's on the edge with their nerves. People are snapping because we're exhausted. I do think it's important to point out that Mrs. Caber and I, we talk all the time so that we're in sync with one another. It's really important to point out that we just finished report cards and our data chat meetings where we meet with one grade level at a time. And we are incredibly grateful in Beverly Hills with the resources that we have and the teachers and school staff that we have. Our data shows that our kids are actually making growth. A significant percentage of our kids are making the exact growth that we want. At this point, I would say 85 to 90% of our kids are making that half year's growth in the half year's time that we've been back in school. So really important to point out. I want to give a shout out to those Horace Mann staff members that are here. I know Mrs. Jung and Mr. Regan are out there, as is our third grade teacher, Mrs. Delajani, and as always, our TK teacher, Mrs. Goldstein. Thank you for joining us. Okay, now looking at the schedule, this is really important to point out. When people talk about coming back to school, we need to all understand that coming back to school does not mean coming back to school in the traditional sense that we're all used to. Because of the LA County ordinances that are put into place, we do have to keep it to a 2 cohort minimum in order to provide that 6 foot social or physical distancing. So within the classrooms, it's going to cut the kids down to 12 kids per cohort. Okay, so now looking at the schedule. So what I'm going to do is give you big picture of our elementary schedule, and then Mrs. Caber is going to jump in and talk about some of the details. So when we do come back to school in elementary alone, remember middle school and high school are something different. In elementary, we will be coming back as 2 cohorts, an AM cohort and a PM cohort. If you look at the screen there, you'll see that the AM cohort will be coming 5 days a week, 4 days at 8:30 to 10:50. And let's see, when did you do that? Wednesday is different. Wednesday session is 9:30 to 11 o'clock because of the late start. So for the most part, 8:30 to 10:50, those kids will leave campus. So be prepared to pick up, if you have AM kids, be prepared to pick them up or have someone else pick them up at 10:50. Then there will be a break in our school day where teachers will leave their classrooms. They'll have spaces to go. Custodians and any other team that we have available, most likely administrators, will be going into classrooms and assisting in cleaning and disinfecting. So there's a lunch break from 12 o'clock, 10:50, I apologize, until 12 o'clock. That gives teachers time out of the classroom, custodians time to get in the classroom, disinfect with the foggers that you've seen on TV at airports, in buses, any other places, we do have those same foggers. And then the PM cohort will arrive on campus at 12 o'clock and stay until 2:20, except for Wednesdays, it will be 12 o'clock until 1:30. So again, AM cohort, large lunch break, PM cohort. Okay, Mrs. Caber, details.
Hi everyone. I'm Sarah Caber. I'm the principal at Hawthorne Elementary for those of you that don't know me. Before I start, I just want to thank all of my staff members from Hawthorne that are here to support us and to be part of the conversation. So jump in if you have a question, go ahead and put something in the chat. Kevin Painter, thank you, Miss Nation. Thank you, Miss Citizen, Miss Castaneda, Miss Ziskin. And if there's other people that I forgot, just send me a text. I'll thank you at the end. But thank you so much for being here. Just to go into the details, one of the things that we're really thankful for in the schedule is that we get to see kids in person every single day. That was really important to us, that there's a consistency and that there's a plan when we're seeing our kiddos. And even though it's only a small amount of time in school, like Mr. Bugby talked about, 2 hours and 20 minutes during that day, there are a lot of things that students will be able to do in that independent time. They'll get used to it. If they're working in class in the morning, they'll have a lunch break to go home and then work independently to finish what would be sort of like homework, but they're getting some independent work right now, and that they're ready to bring it back to school on Tuesday. If they're an afternoon student, they would start with that like work to bring to class, work on it Monday they go home, they work on that homework in the morning independently. Also in the asynchronous time, the part where they're at home, they're also going to see all of their specialist teachers. They're going to have art, music, makerspace, and PE twice a week, just like they're currently having. They're used to logging into those classes. And we're looking at a schedule that includes adding science, social emotional learning, and digital citizenship into that at-home piece. So they won't be at home independent, like having to be on their own for such a long amount of time. There will be a structured part of each of those days. And that's sort of a quick, like detailed overview of things, but if you have some more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and then I can answer some specifics.
And while we're coming up on the questions, I forgot one very important part. So that you all know, to make you feel more comfortable, Mrs. Kaber and I, and obviously Mr. Seaman, who is our God in our district, we've been talking to people in other districts. I reached out to the school that I actually grew up going to, I attended, and many of you know this. I had a meeting with the principal. It was a Zoom meeting. I talked to him about what's working there, because in Orange County, they are back in school. We talked about what's working, what may not be working, and what he would do differently. The fun part is to be able to see the principal's office now significantly later, and I did have some flashbacks. But it was good to hear from that principal the things that he would do differently. Okay, questions, Ms. Starkins?
Actually, Dr. Breggy, do you mind laying the foundation for everything
Oh,
first?
thank you.
Sure, hang on one second. Be happy to do that. Okay, so I'm having some internet issues, so hopefully you can hear me. Can you guys hear me? Can somebody give me a thumbs up? It's going in and out.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay, thanks. It's going in and out, and I apologize. So we are really glad to get to this portion because it's really important that we hear from you. And again, I'm so glad that we have staff in here so that we can get a variety of people's thoughts and opinions from different places, from in the classroom and out of the classroom, administration. So I do appreciate that. So if you have a question, it's important that you understand that please do not put an anonymous name on questions. We want to be able to identify those people who are asking questions. Many times we have to do a follow-up. And so if you are asking a question and you're placing it in the chat, please make sure that you have your name associated with that question so that we can direct that question to you, or if we have to get back to you. With respect to the time that's left, please mute your microphone unless that you've been asked to unmute it. You'll be asked to enter your question into the chat box. Your question will not be public. It goes directly to our moderator, which is Ms. Starkins. And then she will reach out to you, and then you can unmute, and then you can ask the question yourself. And to be upfront, if you have a specific question about your specific child, we ask that you just email us independently, whoever it is that you would like to direct the question to, just to protect your own privacy and to respect everyone's time. There's a lot of people in the room. We want to get to as many questions as we can. And also, I want to just end with that, everything that we have right now is what we have at this time as far as information. That, again, will change today with the assessment that's coming out for our tier. But what we've shared with you is a very transparent update and in a succinct way so that everybody has the same body of knowledge. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if your questions, go into the chat, and then I will turn it over to Ms. Starkins to facilitate.
Ms. Starkins, I apologize. Teachers texted me. I think we have a really important clarification. At one time, we were talking about, and then I know the community knows about this, we were talking about having an AM cohort in class, and then the PM kids would be Zooming into that group. We did look at that ad nauseum, and logistically, that just didn't work out. So the AM cohort will be in class. They'll be doing independent learning in the afternoon. The PM cohort will be in class in the PM and doing independent learning in the morning. There will not be Zooming in amongst the two cohorts. Okay.
Except the specials. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bugby. I will be directing questions to both of our principals, and then if they want to send a question to the teachers that they have in the room, please feel free. A first question, I'm not actually going to ask this person to unmute their microphone because I've had it lots and lots of times. So, Mr. Bugby, can you please tell me, will there be physical distancing in the classrooms, and will children and staff be required to wear masks?
Absolutely, great question. Yes, to all of the above. Yes, they will be spaced out within the classrooms. Yes, every adult, or excuse me, every human being on campus will be required to use a mask, to wear a mask. Although I will say I've already heard from one parent who has a doctor's note, and it's very significant. So I have one person who will not be wearing a mask, but that's a medical condition that we're already working with that parent and that doctor to try to figure out a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Deborah Terme. I apologize if I'm getting your last names wrong. Dr. Breggy, will you please answer this question? And Deborah, please go ahead and unmute your microphone. It's in relation to Manhattan Beach.
Hi, thank you for this. This is wonderful. I wanted to ask, I know other districts have opened in person, like Manhattan Beach District, El Segundo, and they're all public schools. Can you talk to the fact why we're having such a harder time opening compared to those schools? Thank you.
Sure. Hi, Deborah. So there is, I explained a little bit about the TK through 2 waiver issue that, when the state said it's not valid, there were some school districts that actually reopened before. And Manhattan Beach was one of those. And they had a similar schedule where students were coming on campus for a couple of hours. And it's similar. There are school districts across the country that are using the same type of schedule with some variations to it. We had not reopened, as you know. We had previously negotiated with our teachers the adjusted case rate of 10. When we got to 10, that's when we would reopen. Right after that happened is when we saw the surge in cases, and the Department of Public Health was telling all school districts to not do any in-person learning until the cases went down. And so we are still at a point right now, as I showed you, since we had not reopened, that we're in this tug of war now with the state and the county. And now we're looking at what is that process. And so, but in full disclosure, it's not just that. I mean, we have a negotiated agreement with our teachers. And so, as I mentioned, we are continuing the conversation with our teachers and sharing updated information about where we're at. So as the new plan comes in, we're waiting for the LA County information, which is so critical to us. We can't just jump into a state plan without the county, because if they're more restrictive, then we're going to be communicating inaccurate information. So there are a couple of factors here. One of them, Deborah, is the fact that we have the state and county not in alignment about the TK through 2 waiver, and we had not reopened. So that was a difference for us and many school districts that had applied. We also have that previously the agreement with our teachers was 10. And I'm just gonna add something to that because we are responsible for a safe environment, and we've already moved off of the 7 or below. We've already changed the definition with the waiver, that we also have to balance between providing this safe environment, but also having our teachers come back, where our teachers have, many of them, just not even teachers, just office staff, have underlying health conditions. They have they're living with somebody that's older. There's a number of things that are happening in our community. We in all of our own homes that may prevent a teacher from being able to come back. And so the balance is this. It isn't, and it never has been, that just let the staff decide whatever they want to do. It's never been like that. The staff has never wanted it to be like that. It's always been a really good discussion about what is safe, because if we can't create this environment of what is safe, then we're going to be put in a situation like many other school districts that have already been in hybrid, is if we can't get staff in the classrooms, we are putting substitute teachers in classrooms. And so these are teachers that are not credentialed. These are teachers that that don't know the curriculum, but it's an adult in the classroom. So we're trying to find that balance of, when that is. We came up with 10. That's what we agreed upon at the time. And so now we're continuing those conversations as information's coming in from the state. I don't know where that's going to end up as of right now, because those conversations have to keep going. But I think the most important thing that we've been able to keep up with is the continuity of delivering our education. That hasn't stopped. If we would have gone back to school right after break, we would have closed our entire school district 2 times, because we've never had more than a 14-day period where we didn't have more than 3 staff members with COVID-19. And it's not just COVID-19. It also impacts those that are coming to work that are also exposed to somebody that has COVID-19. At one point, we had a custodian who tested positive for COVID-19. And through our process of our compliance team, which is required by the state, there were 9 other people that were in close contact with this employee. So we had 10 people out, 1 that was COVID-19 positive, and 9 that were in close proximity to where they had to be out for 2 weeks. And so we had to then look to replace and find people that could clean, sanitize, and disinfect. It's very complicated, but I want people to know also that it isn't just having someone in it really does, one thing impacts up to sometimes 9, 10 different people. So while some school districts were able to go back, that's great. We've had very high rates, and it's very reflective of what's happening in LA County. I mean, we are very much aligned with the high rates that are happening in LA County are happening with our staff. And so it's ongoing. Every day we're investigating situations. So while some school districts have been able to be back, that's great. We're hoping that when we are back, that we are able to stay and sustain being open, because I think it's really detrimental to being able to having to explain to a student that you're at school 1 week and the next you're closed. We have a small school district. 3 or more cases is an outbreak, closes a school, but it doesn't just close the school. If 25% of your schools have an outbreak, which is one school in our district, the entire district's closed because we have 4 operating campuses. So there's a lot that is complicated, and it's more impactful than people know. But it's something that we know when we do reopen and when it's safe to reopen, we want to stay open.
Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Emily Fialho. I apologize again. Please go ahead and unmute your microphone. Ms. Kaber, will you please answer this question? It's in relation to instructional minutes. Emily, if you've put multiple questions, it's the very first one that you sent 30 minutes.
I got it. I figured. I thought, oh, she'd pick one. First of all, I wanted to thank Dr. Brady and everybody. I really appreciate everything you've done today and always. I really value all your communication, even when there's not much to communicate, because we really understand. I really understand. I have a question going forward, which seems silly because we have no idea when this hybrid model might happen, and I understand that. And I'm really excited to see the plan. I know there's no way we can have the same instructional minutes. There's no way, right? Because they're in school, even though they're going to have independent study. I personally think that's instructional minutes, but I don't know what you consider that. I was just wondering, basically, okay, the instructional minutes are going to be reduced quite a bit in terms of face time, so to speak, with the teacher, but they're going to have a full day's work of learning and whatnot. I know that our teachers are amazing and are going to make sure of that. I just think it seems to me that I think it might be important to communicate, if this is true, that the district might be shifting goals a little bit by basically, well, okay, it seems like we're reducing the school time or academics in order to actually have face time with the teachers, which I think is wonderful. And once it's safe, I just think that a lot of parents just want to open schools, but I hope a lot of parents really are watching this, because there's going to be so much more parental involvement than we have been, because our teachers have done so much and basically been, my daughter's a little bit loud here, sorry, but I mean, she's in first grade right now. So they're all day, they're in school, and all my friends that are teachers up north, they're just blown away. They have no idea how, our teachers are in school all day with the kids. But with only 2.5 hours, a little bit less than that in school, which I am completely understanding of, and I think that the plan is amazing. I think so many parents don't understand that there's so much more that they have to be involved in terms of just, helping the kids transition. And so I think we might be shifting goals properly to more socialization and mental health, which is great. I just wanted to hear from you if that's something that you've talked about, or if there's a plan to really, really tell the parents that they need to be involved more. I'm sorry, I'm talking so much.
No, it's okay. I think I can answer what you want us to know. So besides kindergarten, correct me if I'm wrong, but 1st through 3rd has 230 minutes required, and 4th through 12th has 240 minutes required currently by the state, based on the new bill that went through as we started school in the fall. So if we take our schedule that we're looking at, we're really cutting that down to 140 in-person minutes per day. And then we would add an additional 30 minutes of instructional time with their specialist teacher. So it gets us to about 170 minutes. For most of the students, that's about an hour less than they're getting. So one of the benefits is that Beverly Hills Unified, we really stuck to those minutes as face-to-face instruction for the first 100+ days, right? Today's day 100, which means that we front-loaded our students with instruction. We front-loaded our students with the ability to procedurally manage themselves, that they know how to get through Seesaw, how to get into Google Classroom. So that not so different from when we went out on spring break last year and we had spent all those months together. Oh, I lost you. I was sort of talking to you, but I don't know where you went. Now I don't know where to look. Sorry. For all those months that we spent together in a classroom helped to allow the classes and the students to really know how to function when they went out. Now we've been together 100 days and we'll be together even more. Those students will know procedurally how to be in their classes so that when we leave them to independent work, yes, we're going to rely on parents initially, but they're already used to going into Seesaw, clicking on the right Zoom, knowing how to set up their timers. They're already used to that, and our teachers are doing that. And so the amount of independent time is going to be reduced in this awesome schedule. And each sort of shout out to Ms. Jung and Mr. Painter, who are scheduling kings and queens, who are already working on cohorts and already working on what our schedule would look like for that independent time, so that a student's having at minimum 30 minutes a day, plus 3 more times a week. They're going to have social emotional with their counselor and digital citizenship and their science lab time, so that we're going to sort of put in as much time as we can to support when they're at home, so parents don't have to do any of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Sophia Romanes. It's in relation to teachers being vaccinated. Sophia, will you please go ahead and unmute your microphone? Dr. Breggy, will you please answer this question?
Hi there. Thank you Dr. Breggy, for explaining the confusion with the guidance. Because I believe as of 11/28, the county just released additional guidance to you guys. So which explains the TK through 2 waiver, which seemed a little hopeful, but I'm not gonna, I know it's too soon to probably respond to it since it happened during this meeting. I work for the public health department in full disclosure, but I'm not their spokesperson. So, which is why I happen to know that it just came out and I read it. So, but there's still questions. I guess my question has to do with, it seems like with the numbers going all in the right directions and going down pretty fast, that will probably be at 25 per 100,000 for the next couple of weeks, God willing. So if the county and the state upholds the TK through 2 waiver, what is the plan for bringing at least the TK through 2nd school students back, especially the most vulnerable kids with special needs and the vulnerable kids? And how will teachers being vaccinated impact the coming back to school? And I am a little confused with the number 10 per 100,000, and I'm hoping that could be relooked at. So with all that, I don't know if I made sense, but
yeah, you
there
did.
You
100% you made sense.
Okay.
And so let me just start with, and thank you for letting me know about the update that just came in, which I won't be able to look at until after the middle school town hall, which is after this one. But we're excited that came in. So let me go back to, the 10, the adjusted case rate of 10, when we negotiated that. That was, at that time, we were really pushing it because the state had said it's 7 or below. And we had conversations with our teachers that said, you know what, these are our youngest learners, can we agree to, being in that widespread area, the purple tier. And we did. We also know that, as I mentioned, there are a number of teachers and custodians, office managers that, have accommodations. And so, that's all personnel, private information, but we know when that's going to have an impact on our organization. And so, there's kind of this push-pull of, okay, where can we settle so that we are able to have credentialed teachers in the classroom and enough custodians to clean and office managers to be there. And so this is how complicated it gets, that we spend time looking at that information, because I think that people would be really disappointed if we did return too early and yet, we have a credentialed teacher at home that's providing, the continuity of instruction. As difficult as it is for our teachers and our parents who are incredibly, involved and really part of the entire partnership here. We also need to be aware that, if not having somebody there and being, but they're able to go to school is a trade-off. And so, we've had a lot of teachers that have COVID-19 that you would never even know it. They because they were at home, they continued teaching with COVID-19. So, the trade-off is, of course, whether if somebody does get sick or they just have some accommodations, which there are several people that people would be surprised that their child would be returning to a room with a substitute teacher that doesn't know the curriculum. So the balance, that's where 10 came from. But I want you to, and Sophia, this is a really good question, and it's a fair one, because a lot's changed since we negotiated this. There's, cases are coming down. And as I can't underestimate, again, the partnership that we have to have that discussion with our teachers. Here's the new information that's coming in from the state. We're waiting for that information from the county, even though that may be the TK2 waiver that you mentioned. We're waiting for the whole order. That's, it hasn't been updated. So whoever over there, Sophia, just, get on them for us, because there has been an update since December 28th. We need that. And so, but I want you to know too that our teachers, again, have been very receptive, unlike many school districts that that are in our area. That I have to say, the conversation's always, there's no walls up. There's great conversation happening. We will also be talking about the TK through 2 waiver with our labor partners as well. So, we'll get back to you once those conversations continue. And we'll be very transparent about them.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Diana Sefaradi. Would you please go ahead and unmute your microphone? It's the question about cohorting and larger class sizes. Mr. Bugby, will you please answer this?
Hi, I just wanted to find out, since the cohorts are 12 kids to a cohort, and if the class is bigger than 24 kids, what happens to the remaining of those kids?
Apologies, I muted. Thank you, Diana. It's a good question, because our 4th and 5th grade classes, yes, are bigger than the 24 that it would take to make an even split. But remember, for the rest of this year, we do have those ILC classes that keep the numbers small enough within the classes that will be coming back to campus, that we will be able to maintain that 12-person or maximum of 12-person cohort.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes.
Can I also add something, Ms. Starkin? So just to add on to what Mr. Bugby said, this is, the forward thinking that our district has put into place has offset what could be a real problem for school districts that are directly surrounding us right now. That the school districts that did not provide and offer an ILC model, you have all the students. And so, at the 4th and 5th grade level, as you mentioned, but even middle school, high school, where if you have, and we do believe that they'll change the cohorting eventually. We believe that the state was saying 15. We believe that that'll eventually change. But I want you to think about how this impact is, that if we did not have the ILC to remove some of the students from our student population, we are in a situation where we would have had to have 3 cohorts. And can you imagine how difficult the scheduling would have been to have 3 different cohorts? It would have been ridiculous. And especially for 4th, 5th grade, like that would have been a really difficult scenario, especially at middle school and high school. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Rachel Storm. It's in relation to people who are not as comfortable sending their students back. Ms. Cable, will you please answer this? Rachel, please go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Hi. I just wanted to say you guys are doing an amazing job, and I can't thank you enough. And I think that the remote learning program that everybody's doing and the teachers are doing is fantastic. I think you guys are doing a great job. But my question is, will there be an option for when we go back? Will there be an option for those of us who are not quite comfortable sending on campus?
There's not really an option in that sort of way. That option was the ILC piece already to choose. So hopefully families that felt like they weren't wanting to come back already chose the ILC. And we have a good number of families. And at winter break, we had an increased number of families because they knew that it was more likely that we came back. Because of what sort of Mr. Bugby pointed out earlier, that our teachers are not teaching in person and distance, that they'll only be teaching in person and then they can have the support. If a family were to choose to not send their student back in the live model, they wouldn't get any instruction from their teacher. And they would probably still have access to all of the curriculum, but none of that contact that's happening.
Can I also add to that, Ms. Kaber? So I've been in, I'm going to pick on Mrs. Delajani and Ms. Goldstein because I've been in their classrooms before, and they are actively, they use about every space possible in their classroom as they should as teachers. They are all over the place. And the unfortunate part about remote learning has been that it's like this meeting. You know, if I get up from my chair in my office, you know, I'm going to be really limited. If there are students in front of me right here, and as a former teacher myself, I could either focus here or I could focus here. And what's been missing from our instruction is, you know, those opportunities for assessments and hands-on learning and labs and being able to, you know, like for a teacher to sit down with 3 students to, to listen to reading and doing, getting data and trying to diagnose where learning gaps are. It doesn't happen here. And so it's as much as we would love to be able to provide that option, we have to release the teacher from being in front of the camera because it's a completely different situation when you have people in front of you. And so I wish it was that easy to do, but even at the high school level and middle school level, when you've got labs and experiences, and in Mrs. Delajani's class, Ms. Goldstein, like they have centers, they have they're places where, they meet with students privately. Just over here, there's a table and there's students there. It's that, we have to start to transition back into what the best instructional practices are. And it just, being tied to the camera will impact those that are actually there and in person.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Carrie User, and it's in relation to assemblies. Mr. Bugby, will you please answer this? Carrie, go ahead and unmute your microphone. Perhaps she had to leave. I do realize that we're running over time, but we want to get to as many questions as possible. I will read her question. On late start days, how do you envisage the morning assembly working?
I love that question came up because it came up with us last night after Mrs. Kaber and I had been on the computer for 10 hours. We are in discussions because we're trying to figure out exactly what that would look like. We have a few plans in mind that might work. So we may play with it at the beginning of when we come back. We may have it solidified. So I like that it's come up. We are working on that when we don't have a final answer yet.
Can I just add that we're planning to keep them. We just don't know what they're going to look like exactly. And so we're just sort of messing with what are all our options.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Jackie Kruger. And Dr. Breggy, will you please go ahead and answer this? Jackie, please go ahead and unmute your microphone. It's in relation to whether TK2 and 3-6 are going to be at the same time.
Hi, this is Jackie Kruger. Hi, everybody. Yes, I have like a million questions, but I'll stick to that one. My understanding is that 3 through 6 are opening up simultaneously. Does that mean this reopening for 3 through 6, including like the middle school 6th graders, will open at the same time, but that same schedule?
Hi, Jackie. Nice to hear your voice. So under the governor's plan, he is proposing it's a TK through 6 if the adjusted case rate is below 25 is what in his plan. We're waiting for that LA County Department of Health plan to come in to see if it's going to be more restrictive or if they're going to support that. We know that 6th grade is not going to be part of the proposal. Many school districts have sixth grade in the elementary campuses as a self-contained class. We do not have, our sixth graders are changing classes, which is not allowed under the current definition of a cohort. You can't be intermingling with another cohort of 12 students. It can only be one. So we know that sixth grade is kind of off the table, sixth grade through 12th grade. But so his proposal is TK through 6, less than 25 is the adjusted case rate. What we have negotiated with our teachers is what the state plan was before, which was when you enter the red tier, that's when the state defined that this is when it's safe to reopen schools. And so that's what we have right now. And so as we are meeting with our labor partners and we're talking about, we share, this is information coming from the state. When we get the information from the county, we share that with the county, and then we have discussions with our staff, and not only our teachers, but our instructional assistants and also our office managers, security, all of our staff members as that information comes in. But in full disclosure, right now, we're using the metrics that the state has told us to follow from back to August. That's what we've used. That's what they told us to support. That's what they told us to buy into. They in fact said, use this when you're working with your labor partners. And we did. So the proposal from Governor Newsom basically fell out of the sky, and we're asking questions about how 25 was selected, because when it first came out, it was 28. Some of you might remember that. Then the next day it was, we meant 25. And so we're asking questions about, can you just share with us why, because I'm getting questions from parents asking why 25. And so when we meet with our labor partners, I want to be able to share that rationale with them. And I just don't have that information yet. So there's a lot of pushback to the plan. The plan has a lot more components to it that I haven't talked about, everything from testing and finances and that I haven't talked about. But it's, I know your basic premise of your question is that we're still in that position where we have negotiated when we move into the red tier. Again, we have ongoing conversations with our labor partners as cases are coming down. And when that changes, I will share that information with all of you. And I just want to remind everyone that, many of us in this room, even administrators like myself, former teacher, former principal, this is not the job we signed on for either. We can't wait to have students back in class. It's wearing on all of us. And it is amazing that we've gotten this far. We could not have gotten this far without all of you rearranging. I hear stories that just break my heart about what's happening in your homes, that you're able to make this work. And thank you for that. I don't know how you're able to do what you're doing, but we couldn't do it without you. And we're hoping that there's the light at the end of the tunnel right now. The cases fell 27.1 cases. They're moving in the right direction. We're hoping that regardless of where we are with our labor partners, that they're coming down quickly so that we can get back to some sense of normalcy. And when that happens, we're ready. While school districts don't have what that plan looks like, we do.
And a follow up to that question about the cohorts, since it's 24, which is 2 groups of 12, what about the classes that have more than 24 kids in it? I think that my 5th grade classroom has closer to 30 kids. How are they going to do that? It's going to be broken up additionally?
I'm so sorry, Jackie. We actually already answered that question. It will be available in the YouTube recording that we'll post online once this is finished. We did address that in full, and I have hundreds of questions in the chat box. I wanted to give everybody a turn. Dr. Breggy mentioned working parents and how hard this has been on our parents. Catherine Warren, will you please go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask your questions about the 2-hour window and how that can affect our working parents? And Ms. Cable, would you please go ahead and answer that question? Go ahead, Catherine. Okay, I'm going to ask the question just to keep us moving. So it's from Catherine Warren. The 2-hour window is really hard for working parents. Is there a before school drop-off time window and a pickup window to make it easier?
Hi. So Katie, I saw you on here and you must have had to go back to work, but Katie's also one of our teachers. So thank you for being here. Just to address that, like there's going to have to be some staggering that we're putting into place. It's part of what our PBIS teams are both working on in terms of how do we just work on the flow in our campus and how will that work. We know that we have a meeting already set up this week with our assistants, our instructional assistants and our playground aides to start to think about how we can use the manpower of our school and the space in our school to supervise students. In addition, thank you, Mr. Ellis, for being here, but we know that we'll partner with our city, who's already starting to provide some programming. And I know that they want to support us in whatever way we can and support working parents in whatever way they can.
Fantastic. Thank you. Dr. Breggy, will you please answer this next question? It comes from Monica Sullivan. It's in relation to chemicals and how that will impact our students and disinfecting. Monica, are you still with us? Please go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. First of all, I want to thank you all for all this information. It really helps parents to plan and understand what's happening. So thank you so much for this session. Yeah, my question is related to the chemicals that are going to be used daily. So I want to know if you guys have information that you can share with parents about how long the chemicals stay in surfaces, in the air, especially for the afternoon cohort.
So that's a great question, Monica. Thank you for answering it. And I can provide principals to send out even more detailed information. But we have, obviously, there's different chemicals. And as we are learning more about the virus, new products have been developed so that they're safe for our custodial staff to use, for the cleaning and disinfecting and sanitizing. And those are different than which would be used like during the exchange of cohorts, which is different from the deep cleaning. That is a completely different product. I'm happy to share with you with the principals, and they can share out. I don't have it in front of me, but the actual product names. I want to be really transparent about what we're using.
It's ready. So it's our Ready Together plan. We've already published it. So if you go to bhusd.org/Ready Together / the exact product names with every single ingredient is listed in that plan.
And so we were, as administrators, all trained on the products, and just so that we were aware of what our custodians were actually using. And as Mr. Bugbee pointed out, we're all in this together. So whatever it takes when we're having an exchange of cohorts, it's all hands on deck, including me, my staff, whatever we need to do, if we need to be in schools to help with that transition period so that we are using the appropriate product correctly. We know it's an advanced product that has recently come out, and it's safe. It's been approved by LACO and all of our school districts that that inspect and make sure that we're following all of the guidelines. But it's a very progressive product too that has evolved over time with as the virus, as we've learned more information about the virus.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Lauren Eckhart Smith. It's actually directed directly to Ms. Kaber. So could you please go ahead and answer it? It's in relation to how you're choosing which kids are in which cohort. Lauren, please go ahead and unmute your microphone. Okay, I'm going to ask the question. Ms. Kaber, how are you choosing which children go into the morning cohort or which children go into the afternoon cohort?
It's pretty random, actually, about which students go to the morning or the afternoon. And what we are doing is making sure that siblings are in the same cohort so that families are not going back and forth. And as we get a little bit farther down into the process, we're going to be consulting with teachers so that we've balanced their classes the best that we can for the most part, so that they'll get a chance to see it before we go out to say that how we put together a combination of students that doesn't work or the best combination for being able to teach in that 2.5-hour period. But it's going to be pretty random.
Thank you so much. Our next question will probably be best answered by Dr. Breggy. It comes from Ellie Yadigar in relation to substitute teachers and negotiations and how that process works. Ellie, please go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Hi guys. So my question is, let's say LA County says they agree with the 25% and you guys go and try to negotiate with the union and the union says no. I want to know how long you're going to wait before you decide to take the matter into your own hands and hire non-union teachers so we can open up our schools.
Well, let me start off by just saying, we haven't even had the conversation yet because we don't have, what LA County is supporting. But if we go with the assumption that you just brought up, we will have that conversation with our teachers and share that information and see where we can get. Putting substitute teachers into our classes is that's a real concern. If teachers are not coming back, it's not because they just say I'm not coming back. There are through our personnel department in any organization, there are opportunities for leaves and sick time, and if there are accommodations that by law we have to follow, just like the people doing construction on our property. We have to follow those laws. So it's not about replacing a teacher. If a teacher cannot come back due to the appropriate accommodations, then we have to hire a substitute teacher to come in. We have awesome substitute teachers. Many of them are being utilized as we speak right now. We are actively looking because if a teacher legitimately and appropriately through the channels cannot come back, that we want to try to ensure that we have the best quality substitute teachers that are available. So we're reaching out to universities. We're being very proactive. We're on social media asking for substitute teachers. We want to ensure that we get the highest quality and the best substitute teachers. So if there is a teacher that can't come back, that we're able to have the highest quality substitute teacher in the classroom.
So is the union going to actually have a deadline as to when they're going to say they will send their teachers back with this 25% case rate or not? That's my question. Are you giving them a deadline, or could this take months? That's what I'm asking.
So, we're gonna start with and have positive intentions with our unions, because it's not just teachers. If we don't have enough custodians, we can't open. So this is a conversation that happens with all of our employees. And so we're going to have that conversation with them. We're going to see how that goes. And if people can't come back, we will address it at that time. We will give communication to our community where we are in these conversations. We will absolutely do that. But we want to set some positive intentions that the conversations are just starting for this week. And again, we're still waiting to see what LA County has to say.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Jamie Bridgetel, and it's in relation to whether our students need to be COVID tested in order to return to school. Dr. Breggy, feel free, or our principals, whoever would like to answer this. Jamie, please go ahead and unmute your microphone and go ahead. Okay, I will ask it. Will students be COVID tested in order to return to school? And will you do this regularly in order to return to school after long weekends and breaks like spring break?
So in the governor's plan, one of the issues that many school districts are having with the plan is that returning to campus for our students and our staff, the plan is requiring twice a week, depending on the adjusted case rate, but it's high enough at this point where it would be twice a week for our students and our staff. For our staff, we already have set up an organization that we've already gone through our testing protocol for testing staff, and that's in place. But when it comes to testing students and doing that twice a week, it is with the paperwork that's involved and it's an expense that's over $400,000 for each school district, especially if you're looking at doing twice a week, because the testing is a problem, and with the insurance right now, the insurance is not supporting testing for asymptomatic people. Well, 99% of our people coming in are asymptomatic. And so we've asked the state, since the state is making that mandate for students, is can you help us with this plan? Because it's really difficult now to find somebody that can be on site at every school twice a week. And for all of that interchange of traffic, of testing staff and students, what that's going to look like, who's going to pay for that, how is that going to be conducted, how is that sustained when a lot of our companies are starting to move towards vaccinations rather than testing. And that's an issue that's out there as well with some of the data, is that less people are being COVID-19 tested because the organizations that do the testing are moving to vaccinations. So it is a problem. The state is requiring that, which has been in the proposal. We're all asking for help in putting that plan together, because it will be the most tumultuous with kids in classrooms where kids are coming down and being tested and then going back to their classrooms. It's creating more of an opportunity for spreading any possible transmission than actually doing what the testing is supposed to do. So there's a lot of pushback, but we're working with the state to see what the final details are with that plan. But as far as staff, we do have a plan in place, and we have tested it with our staff.
Thank you. It is an hour and a half into the session, and so I'm going to wrap up by saying, if your question hasn't been answered, please reach out to our principals. Jackie Kruger has done a phenomenal job to be the eyes and ears, and she has put so many questions into the chat. I want to finish on this last question, and Ms. Kaber, if you could please answer it. It's a hardball question. If there is a class where there are no kids in the ILC and there are 30 kids in that classroom, how are you going to divide that cohort so it's evenly split between AM and PM when you have a maximum? Good luck.
That's a really good question. Well, our cap is 29, so that's good. Most of this is that we are expecting that the county is going to increase our cohort number. We really are expecting all of that. And in all of the measurements that we did this summer, because we know that the state is at 16, in all of our walkthroughs that we did on both sites this summer, we measured for 15 students in a classroom in 4th and 5th grade. And we know that there's plenty of space in all 4th and 5th grade classrooms to have 15 students in those classes, 6 feet apart from mouth to mouth, a minimum, and another 6 feet apart to have a teacher in there with a total of 16 people, which is really the number that we've been seeing much more regularly, even though the county's been more restrictive. So if it happens that it's not, that something else happens and that's not there, we'll relook at some things and some options for cohorts and for some shifting around, and we'll, I taught 5th grade, so we'll figure it out.
So let me also add, Ms. Kaber, that as you had mentioned, so with the state, this is a great example of the state having this protocol that we all have to follow, but the county can be more restrictive. This is why the information from LA County Department of Public Health is so important, because if they are supporting the state plan, which is very possible, then we're going to start seeing the movement of changes of numbers in that cohort. And we know that that's the plan eventually. And so the state's already there. So if the county is going to be supporting the state plan, we're going to start seeing larger numbers of students being able to come back into that cohort, which is awesome. That we love that. That gives us more flexibility and especially not only 4th and 5th, but also our middle school and high school when they return.
Can I just add just something? It's on a separate topic about the cohorts. Both Mr. Bugby and I and our assistant principals have already gotten emails requesting AM and PM cohorts. Please don't send us those emails. We're not taking requests. Just like when we do kindergarten placement, Ms. Goldstein's on here. She knows that we're trying to figure out what's best for all of our students and for doing everything that we can in terms of EL learning, in terms of Title I, in terms of intervention, the best that we possibly can to build those cohorts. So please don't send us those emails. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everybody. I will let Dr. Breggy wrap up, but I just wanted to say the questions that I haven't got to are super specific, like how can our PTA help with a specific thing? If we haven't got to that question, please reach out to your principals. They love emails about anything other than requests for cohorting. Ms. Kaber's email is kaber@bhusd.org. Mr. Bugby's email is bugee@bhusd.org. Both of those emails are on the websites also, but please feel free to email them. I really apologize if I missed your question. We did have so many. We've gone now for an hour and 35 minutes, which is a Herculean effort by Dr. Breggy and our principals. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Breggy, any final words?
Just a quick thank you to everybody. As you can see with the information that's presented today, there's a lot of things that can divide us and put us in different opinions and places. Please go forward with positive intentions that we are working so hard every day, all day, 7 days a week. We are putting measures into place. And just to give you one example, as our neighboring districts are struggling with how they're going to get even health screenings and temperatures taken as students come back without bottlenecks and kids being right next to each other. Our school board has been so supportive of the work that we're doing. We purchased top of the line thermal scanners for temperature taking, where our students won't even know that their temperature is being taken because it's such a large volume that we're trying to keep things as normal as possible when students are arriving at school without bunching them up, singling them out. So we've really thought ahead. And I know that that's sometimes hard to get to with the scheduling and some of the things that we've done. I get that because we're here in the here and now, and that's frustrating. But please know that once we're able to work through this information, the future bringing our students back is bright. And we've really thought ahead far more than many of our school districts. So I want to thank you for the time that you've provided today and all day long when you're helping and supporting your students. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been a great partnership, and we're working really hard to return all of our students and staff safely so that we don't open and then close and then have to reopen. Thanks, everybody.